right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Apparently, the idea was to record these sessions, and so the first one didn't get fully recorded properly. And so now we're good for the second one, so I better not mess it up, right? Okay. If you're still joining us or have just walked in recently, there are two things going around that you need to express opinions about. One is the session evaluation slip for this event, and the other is my own evaluation for CU Boulder's OIT. Woo. So those are here, and we can pass them around if you wouldn't mind sending things back. Okay. So if you haven't yet gone to this little bit link at the bottom of the screen, please do so if you have a computer device with you. If not, go ahead and write it down. This is where you go to get all of the info that I'm talking about. My digital handout is here, as well as our space that we're going to be playing in today as we talk about how to make accessible presentations and multimedia. So, I'm presenting not in presenter view on purpose because I'm going to be popping around and doing some behind the scenes stuff utilizing this Google Drive folder. If you weren't here for part one, and several of you are new, so welcome. We talked briefly about why accessibility is important. CU Boulder narrowly avoided a major lawsuit with the US Department of Justice, and now we have an accessibility policy. You can click on that link and read all about it if you're interested. But basically, CU Boulder is taking a roadmap approach and working towards in good faith progress toward full accessibility of all of our digital assets. We continue to accommodate students who have disabilities immediately, and anything new that we create, if we can, we try to make that new stuff accessible. So in what I show you here today about presentations, don't think, oh my gosh, I've been making all of my PowerPoints wrong. I need to cancel my weekend plans and redo everything. No, that's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is just, hey, heads up, this is a better, more usable way of doing it. So next time you make a new slide deck, try it out. See how it works for you. In my experience, it takes no more time to do things accessibly once you're used to the workflow and know what buttons to push. It really is just a matter of click here, not there. So that's what we're doing here. I'm from CU Boulder, but the implication is that a lot of this accessibility stuff is sort of spreading to the other campuses in the system. So this is probably not going to be a big deal for you on this campus this year, but it's coming. Dun-dun, 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 dun-dun. Right? Not scary at all. No. Man, nobody's biting my jokes today. It's just to give you kind of a heads up, letting you know that, yes, this is important. CU Boulder sees this as a civil rights issue. And honestly, having been an instructional designer and my background's in education, I've taught on the college level for 10 years, like, this stuff is just good teaching. I've done research to back this up that I'll talk a little bit about. But yeah, it's just the right thing to do, and there's tons of resources available. So you can click on those links and get more info. What we're going to do now, though, is go to this bit link. And when you get to the bit link, you're going to see this folder. Absolutely. The address is, and bit links are case sensitive. So if you're not getting it right away, make sure you're capitalizing everything. bit.ly/U, capital D, capital C, capital U, capital O, NLINE. So UDCU Online 2017. And that should get you into this folder where you can see this very presentation, as well as a variety of other resources that we've been playing with this morning. So the only one that we're going to really focus on for this session is the presentation, the example presentation. So you're going to go to example presentation. You're going to open it up. And then from here, you're going to download it as a PowerPoint. So we're going to do this in PowerPoint because there are some special features to making this accessible. This is very much a hack. I want to emphasize that. It's what I have seen to be a really good user experience that makes material accessible, but is not necessarily what Microsoft would tell you to do. So you're getting an inside scoop, and you won't find a lynda.com tutorial on this, so pay attention. But the basic principle is pretty easy and holds true in both PowerPoint and in slides. So you can apply these ideas to Google Slides, no problem, and it should be just fine. Yay, we're using Google Drive. Okay, so you go to File, Download As, Microsoft PowerPoint. Yeah? Okay, so we're going to open that up once you get it downloaded. Come on, PowerPoint. We'll do it again, see if it's just taking a moment here. Here we go, okay. So, what we've just done reenacts the experience that most students with blindness or low vision would do if you were to email them a slide or a link to a Google slide deck. They would probably just go to it, open it up, and download it immediately into PowerPoint and try to look at it there. Most screen reader users that are native are already pretty fluent in all of the controls for how Microsoft products work. So hands down, Word docs and PowerPoints are going to be really accessible as long as you're putting good content into them. So that's what we're going to focus on here. All right, so now, I don't know about you all, but if somebody were to just email me a PowerPoint, I tend to kind of give it a quick skim on the left-hand side, get a sense of, okay, what are we looking at here? What's the content, right? Well, people who are blind do the same thing. They want to get a sense of what's the overall content. Can we get like a quick preview version of this? And what they would do, and I've worked with several colleagues with blindness and have sent them enough PowerPoints over the past couple of years that this is an honest observation of real practices that I'm telling you, is that they go to View over here, this View tab, and then they click Outline View. And suddenly, our column on the left has changed. And now we have textual display. Everything that the computer sees as text has come up here. And what our job is, and what our goal here is to see if we can get a direct correlation between what's on the slide and what's coming up as text. And if we have good correlation, then it's going to be a pretty accessible document. So the first slide, cool. We have the title and we have the class. That's what we got. We get to slide 2, and we start to see a problem, right? What's going on? Slide 2, we only have the title of this slide that's coming up in the outline view. What has happened? By the way, you're welcome, kittens on the internet. I make the examples so they get to be as silly as I want. Have some memes. It's Thursday. You made it here. Okay, so what has happened, and we can kind of do some investigative work and figure out what has maybe gone wrong that none of this content is coming up. We go back to Home and then click Layout. Oh, we can see what the original layout of this slide had been, which was your classic title and body. So if we make a new slide, right, that's a default layout that comes out, right? How many of you just click on these boxes and kind of go, delete? Yeah? Yeah. I used to too. The problem with this is when you do that, You've just deleted a whole content area. This is your way of communicating to the computer what is on this slide. And now that's gone. So what had happened here was that that box was inserted using the text box tool. Somebody drew this box and said, this is some content, right? As I'm doing this, though, is anything coming up over here? No. And that's because I've inserted what the computer reads as an image, folks. So using the text box tool, either in PowerPoint or in Word, in a Word doc, you are inserting images onto your content. And in order to make those accessible by Microsoft standards, you have to add alternative text to them, because the computer doesn't see anything different between this and this. Bummer. Huge bummer. Huge waste of time. The way you insert alternative text onto something, by the way, is you would essentially right-click on it. If you're on a Mac, you control-click and scroll down to Format Picture. And you get this little area that pops up here to format your picture. You come over here to Size and Properties, and then you can click on Alt Text. Skip the title. People who are screen reader users skip the title because they assume it's redundant information. They just get straight to the description. And if this is content, which in this case, this silly thing is content, I would type an alternative text tag for it. As I was typing that, does that come up over here in the outline view? No. So you've just added content, and now this is technically accessible, but for a screen reader user, they would come in here and they would try to go through all of the different clickable areas, and they'd have to try to listen to all of those images to figure out what's going on this slide. It's a pretty bad user experience. It's really disjointed. So rather than alt tagging your paragraphs and copy pasting this content into alternative text areas that don't show up in the outline view, and knowing that most native screen reader users go to the outline view to figure out, hey, what's going on here? The best solution is to just use those default layouts. Use those boxes that come up, because all of that content is going to be here. That's what we did here, right? That was part of our default layout. That was part of what was already there. So I'm going to fix this. I'm going to delete this, because this is just some silly stuff that I put on here. But if I already have my slides set and I say, no, these are perfect and beautiful and I don't want to ever change them, right? We can remediate this pretty quickly, actually. We're going to insert a layout back onto this slide. It won't change much of how it looks aesthetically, so just hang tight for a second. Here, we're going to do a two content area with the title, and I'll show you why. So we have these boxes now that have popped back up. We're going to go into our text box, highlight all that content, copy it, come over here into the layout, right? This is now what the computer understands is important on this slide, is in the default layout. Paste that in there. Boom. It's now in the outline view. That's what we want. That's what we want it to be. But rather than, resize this and delete this text box and do all of that, it takes me half a second to just drag it off of the slide. If I'm presenting, my slide looks exactly the same, right? I didn't have to waste any more time doing anything crazy with it. This is called the palette, right? The slide area. It's the palette. So just drag stuff off the palette, but the computer doesn't know. The computer doesn't care whether it's there visually or not. As far as the computer knows, it's still there. You've just dragged it off the palette so that it's still coming up in outline view, and it's fully accessible. Yeah?
That works for
Mm-hmm.
Gobbling up, right?
Yeah, if you want to print it, that's a different story. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I find is that if you are printing with speaker notes, I just copy pasted all that text, right? Just paste it down there. And it'll still come up. You know, it's one more keystroke, and you've still now figured out a way to make sure that that text is available. Same thing with alternative text. And again, this is very much a hack, so I hope you're not just cringing over there. But, you know, we have our alternative text tag that we just created for this image, right? Remember, we formatted this picture and we created this alternative text tag. You can copy that, put it into this box. Now it's down here. It's in our outline view. It's communicating there's something else on this slide. And I'm just going to drag that content area, that layout, right off the presentable view. So if I know how to do this and I'm working pretty quickly, I can remediate a slide and make that inaccessible content fully accessible in about 30 seconds. It's really pretty fast. So if you wanted to play along, if we had more time, I would ask you to, you know, fix this, create an alternative tag for this image so that it pops up in here. And, you know, fix this one. How would you, you know, work with this kind of an image? Here, in the context of this presentation, this would be a decorative image. So I do want to briefly talk about decorative images. Decorative images you can use a null tag for. So I would actually not put any content. I don't necessarily need anything in my outline view that lets my students know there's a picture of a daisy on this slide, because it's not part of the content. It's not important. If you were going to end up putting this, you know, in HTML or something, you want to null tag it. And this works the same in Word as well. So if you have images in your documents and they're just decorative, right-click on those, format that picture, and write null. Don't write descriptive image. That's a whole lot of other characters, and you've just wasted half a second. Just write null. It's the industry standard. Or if you're going to be uploading it onto the internet, use 2 quotation marks, double quotation marks. And that essentially hides it from the screen reader. You're experiencing the world through your ears. You don't need to know if there's some decorative images all over the place. You want to know the content and move on, because those decorative images aren't for you. They're for the people who can see. So you want to just cut through the mumbo jumbo and get onto the other stuff. So that's why null tagging is important. Yeah? Exactly. That's why don't give this an alternative text tag. Remember, the stuff over here in the alt tag area is just for screen reader users.
But is it adding anything to the presentation at all?
In my opinion, no, but it's a personal design choice, right? Some people love having decorative images. They're image people, and they just want to have images on their stuff. I'm not here to tell you how to design. I'm here to help you think about doing it accessibly. So it's also a good reminder that images and context are important, right? So if this was just a decorative image in the context of my kitten meme lecture, sure. But if this was a botany class and you need to know what genus this daisy is, suddenly this is content, right? So it's completely contextual. So that's the thing to keep in mind. You want to be as concise as possible with those images so that they get exactly what they need and nothing more, right? We don't need to know that this is an orange kitten. We just need to know that it's a kitten meme and it's communicating a thing that's meant to be funny. Yeah. Side by side, or I think you can use a space too. They're read the same way. Yeah. I just added the space so that it was easier to tell. Yeah.
Well, can you describe a little bit more the importance of if you have an image that's maybe a scientific image that has like a process and how to describe that image?
Yep. That's a great question. So the question was, what do you do with something that's more like an infographic in its content? It can be complicated. Sometimes you can get to the meat of what you need an infographic for without giving every single word that is part of that infographic. Especially if it's something that's going to be, you're coming back to it time and again. Let me see if I can pull an example here from some actual content that we've done. Okay. So we've done some research on this hack because it is a hack. It doesn't exist elsewhere. It's just based on our observed best practices of how people with blindness tend to use this tool. So we wanted to see what would happen if we did this, first of all, to all of the content in a class. And secondly, what would happen if we showed the students where they could go to find all their info? And we found some really interesting things. So this is a slide deck from an evolutionary biology class, and there is a ton of infographics here. So what we've found is that the professor already had these massive slide decks already made. So we were using this hack approach to sort of go back and remediate them. What they ended up doing was, as they were creating new slides, they created a custom layout. That already had a content area created off to the side for alternative text. You can do that. They're totally manipulable. If you need 10 text boxes on your slides every time, no problem. Create one default layout with those boxes exactly where you want them to go. Save yourself that time, because that layout can come back for you again and again and again and save you the effort. So they just started inserting this layout on top of all the old slides. And what happened was that then they got very creative in explaining exactly what was relevant about that content and doing so in a concise way. So the alternative text for this is a salamander after amputation of a forelimb, and then some time later when the limb is mostly regrown, right? We don't need to know that there are 5 steps that are articulated in this particular graphic, because that's not what's important. Regrowth doesn't happen in 5 discrete steps, right? We just want to show that time is passing. So that's all you have to say, right? So that's the idea. When you have something that's complicated, you want to get across the overall meaning. What is the meaning you want them to learn? Yeah.
So in that instance, the alternate text describes kind of the whole, the visual image of the whole slide, not each object.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Whereas had somebody come through and tried alternatively tagging each and every one of these things, there would be 4 different areas to navigate into to have to try to listen to alternative text for. And it's not important. What's important is that we're getting the whole, right? We don't even talk about the skunk and the globe, because that's just pretty stuff that the professor had liked and put on the slide. It's not part of the content. So it doesn't need to be part of the alternative text, right? There's a big difference between content and design. And we want those things to work well together, but ultimately we're responsible for delivering content. So what we did is, if you were to look at the outline view of this slide deck, it's full of content, chock full of content. Every single slide deck for this course is like this now. And they showed this to the students. They said, hey, all of this is here. Go to the outline view. And what they found was that students could copy-paste all of this content, move it over to a Word doc. That's the students who are blind and using screen readers. That's typically how they figure it out. They get all this content, they move it over to a Word doc, and they can fly through it with their screen reader. So that's a really good way for them to understand the totality of the content without having to navigate and listen to every single different, image and, alternative text tag, right? It's a really slow user experience. It's much faster to just listen to it straight through and have it read like a narrative, right? What we found, though, was that all sorts of students in the class who didn't identify as having any kind of disability were putting this in Word and then using it to build out their notes for the class. They'd copy paste and then they'd add their own notes in and amongst this text in a Word doc. We found students who speak English as a foreign language were copying and pasting this text over to a Word doc and translating it into their preferred language to help them study. We found that students who preferred to hear things and see things simultaneously would put this into a Word doc and then run it through a tool that we have called Census Access that converts text to MP3 if you want it to. And so they were listening to their PowerPoints. I mean, it became quite revolutionary in how we think about universally designed content, honestly, that if you make this stuff available and show students what's possible, they will choose their own adventure and come up with a learning experience that truly suits their preferences in how they learn their content. So it's accessible, and it's, I think, honestly, once you know this trick about the layouts and you just use the layouts, it's really not any more time consuming to make stuff this way. I make all of my stuff this way. What I do to let people know, to let users know that I've made stuff this way, and I'll point it out for you, is, go away. At the beginning of all of my presentations, I include a little note. Slide 1, hey, here's the accessibility features of this presentation. Just go into the outline view and you'll find all of the textual representation of this content. What that serves to do, and you have access to this presentation, so by all means, just come in here and copy paste this if you want to use it. When I present, I start on slide 2. None of you knew it was there, right? Because it's the prelude. If I was emailing this to a student with blindness, they could navigate to this and hear it, and then they know where to look to get all the content. They know they don't have to go through the whole presentation and painstakingly click on every single clickable image and look for alt text and stuff. They know, okay, cool. I can just listen to the outline view, all that content, and I'm good, right? Yeah, question.
So from a design standpoint, it's almost like you think of the text first,
Mm-hmm.
and the visuals second.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Or you can think of them as hand in hand, if you like. I mean, some people go back and forth with that. What you can do is, if you prefer to, especially if you have things off the slide and you don't want to be writing stuff over here, you can write it in the outline view. So you can edit and move text around in the outline view, and if that's a better composing strategy for you as the author, go for it. But yeah, you're trying to mentally conceive of all of your visual presentation content as having a textual equivalent. How would somebody listen to this and understand it, right? Pedagogically, personally, I think it just makes me a better teacher because I'm ensuring that what I'm putting into my slides is actually relevant and part of the content, and it's what I want my students to know. So I encourage you to try it out. Thank you so much for being here. Are there any other quick questions? Yeah. And then you...
One is, if you take this document that you created in an accessible way, convert it to PDF, does that ultimately get lost? Or does the PDF actually retain the outline capability?
Unfortunately, because there's not a PDF, like a printable view that includes the outline view, yes, you are just printing the slides themselves, and you can also ask it to print with the presenter notes. So that's why, if you know that that's where you're going with this, that you're going to be printing it out for people, or you're going to ask them to see it as a PDF, then copy paste that stuff into the presenter notes. Yeah. So it's a good hack for content. And again, this is just if you're making this stuff available to students as content in the course. Yeah. Another quick question? We good? Okay. Well, thank you so much. You should have a OIT survey. That's just for me and for my work. But also please fill out the little half slips for See You Online for this symposium. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Thank you.